One. Tuesdays with Maury. Tuesdays with Maury. Tuesdays with Maury. It's showtime. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tuesdays with Maury, episode 45, also known as the Spooky Scary Cinema episode. This is not Halloween episode, we swear. I'm Ian Taylor, your host. Join me tonight as the amazing co-host, artist, and filmmaker, Devin Kane. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
Hey, good. It feels like a long time when I've actually, gotten to talk in one of these. I don't know, Steven, we love having you on here, but it's hard for me to ever get a word in between you two. You just kind of go off, and I just kind of listen there for a while. So now I feel like I have to fill a larger void now, because
Yeah,
it's always so busy.
yeah, we
Although
gotta
if
make
if
it
you
work.
noticed this week, I'd like to apologize. We're actually on Thursdays. Things have kind of been just shifted off last couple weeks. And then Steven, he's uh dealing with another issue. It's apparently hot as balls in Arkansas. Um, it's pretty hot up here. It's like the humidity and the heat is just unbearable. But I'm hoping his air conditioner gets fixed soon.
Mm.
Because man, having no AC in this heat is absolutely unbearable.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what it's like right now. I feel bad for
Oh
those
yeah.
who have to live in the heat without air conditioning. So if you're listening in and you're dealing with the heat, we're with you, man. I hope you stay cool out there. Don't pass out on us,
Yeah.
because we'll lose more
Yeah.
customers this way.
Don't succumb to the don't succumb to wet bulb conditions.
Yes.
That's kind of terrifying.
Mm,
I work in a car parts factory, and it gets absolutely disgusting in there.
I'd
Over
imagine.
and you know what? I'm on the night shift also, and it's still pretty bad even then. So I can't imagine being there in the middle of the afternoon and the sun's beating down on top of all that. Just crazy.
So,
We have to
yeah, go on.
like we have these we have these like spot coolers that are like little portable AC units, and you have to refill the water or dump out the water every so often because it's pulling so much humidity from the air that you have to refill it like 3 times in an over a night. It's kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. For all the day workers out there, you got our support. And listening to the
So
podcast while
in
you're
the
at it.
spirit of yeah, so in the spirit of wanting to beat the heat, we are welcoming Halloween slightly early. This is last week was my selection episode where we looked at Kubrick's Leftovers. At some point, maybe we want to look at Stephen King's Leftovers, look at some adaptations of his films
Ooh, good idea.
that are questionable. But Ian, this was your selected special selection episode. So what are we talking about today?
We've got three things we're talking about, one of which is a TV series called Dark Place. But besides that, we're doing Beetlejuice and
Mm-hmm.
Paranorman as companion pieces because I want this to be the silly paranormal episode. And I feel like all those movies tied together one way or another.
Right on.
I haven't seen Paranorman. It's the only Leica film I haven't seen, so that's why I wanted to recommend that. And Dark Place, well, there's just so much to talk about with Dark Place, so I couldn't help myself.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which,
Another thing I just wanted to announce quick, in lieu of in lieu of Steven not being here, we have a massive bracket tournament going through all the requested episodes. Our battle box has been overfilled with all kinds of requests, and Steven's been taking up the helm in cataloging all those, and we are just rapid firing them off, going head to head, and people are voting for their favorite episodes, and just kind of breaking it down. I think all the ones that are runner-ups or lose we will get to eventually because they're all just so good ideas that I want to do them. There's certain ones that I've lost that I'd love to still do. Then maybe we'll order them from which one won and then go backwards from there. Maybe we'll see. We'll talk to him about how we want to go about
there's
that. But
tons of interesting choices.
it's exciting stuff. Go vote for your favorite episodes.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
if you aren't
and
subscribed to our
I'm
Discord
glad that
channel,
we
you should do
have.
so.
I'm glad that we had that. Yeah. Oh, join our Discord channel. Subscribe to Ian on Twitch and and to us on YouTube at pretentious connoisseurs of content. plug in all the stuff right up front
Name wasn't
before we
my
even get
idea.
into what our content is. No, that was compromise from our original title, The Pretentious Asshats of Cinema.
Nice. First and
Oh
foremost,
yeah.
we have a very delightful show to talk about. Spoiler alert for all free products we're speaking of today. First thing we're talking about, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. I would like to introduce this one, if
Mm-hmm.
that's alright.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Sweet. So, Garth Marenghi's Dark Place was a very ambitious parody series written and directed by Richard Ayoade, I think that's how you pronounce it, and Matthew Holness, who both played Dean Lerner and Garth Marenghi, respectively, in the series. But thanks to the horrible marketing, the low ratings, and the fact that the show was, believe it or not,
Nice.
very expensive to make, the show was canned after only 6 episodes. I think it was aired on Adult Swim. I couldn't find out that information in time, but this definitely seems like the kind of show that would be perfect for that channel. So I'm gonna go with Adult Swim. It peaked around that period, anyways. So what's it about? Well, on one hand, it's about a fake show that was canceled in the 80s, ironic, by the same name, about a group of hospital workers dealing with strange supernatural occurrences in their hospital. From a man who literally refuses to die, to an eyeball that impregnates another man, to a woman that turns into broccoli. But on the other hand, and what really makes the show stand out from other parodies for me, the show also inserts comedies and interviews from the cast behind the fake show. Which seems innocent enough at first. You only uncover that Garth Marenghi is a pretentious, egotistical prick, Dean Lerner is a violent sociopath, and Todd Rivers just really doesn't want to be there and is clearly just bribed with free drinks during the interviews. There's just so much to the show, and I want to know what you think about this show, Devin, right now.
Oh, well, I hate to say up front, I didn't get enough time to quite finish it, but all the stuff that I've seen thus far, I've quite enjoyed. This seems like the perfect show to catch on Adult Swim at 3 in the morning when you're high or drunk or just sad. This is the perfect kind of show to fill that void of just absurdism and it, yeah, it gets like a pitch perfect parody of those kinds of supernatural drama shows of the time period. It's very like Twin Peaks, like a parody of that kind of mystery show, but also
Hmm.
taking place in a hospital. Um, man, someone told me once that I looked like the one guy in it, or
Yes!
what it was is
Was
that
it Matt Berry?
probably it
Mm.
was, or
The guy with the eyebrows?
I think a mutual friend of mine was uploading a picture and Facebook told him to tag me for some reason, which is a bit weird.
Instinctual. Yeah,
Um,
then they knew. I can kind of see it a little bit.
yeah,
If you
and
were British and
and you know
became a
what
comedian.
the way I first came across the show, the way I first came across the show was just out of context clips on YouTube, and I feel like that's almost one of the best, other than seeing it at Adult Swim at 3 in the morning. Seeing just like out of context clips on YouTube is probably one of the best ways to experience this show.
Hmm. I mean, the show itself is basically hidden out of context montage on YouTube. Like, how far did you get, by the way? How
Oh
many
yeah.
episodes?
I can't remember the last one. I think I probably just got to the second last episode. I
Nice.
think there was just one more left in the playlist.
No, that's alright. You
I
got
kept I
pretty
kept
far in.
having issues with technology on my end.
It's all good.
I'll I'll get into that with Paranorman. Had to use a VPN to access it, and then it tried kicking me at some point.
Ooh.
And I'm like, I'm trying to watch this legally. God damn it! I
I'm
don't want to
trying
have
not to
to.
break the
I don't
rules.
want to have to go to other means to yeah
Well, I'm
see this.
glad you
But
put in
you're
the effort.
I'm trying to watch. Yeah, no, it was and it was worthwhile, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, I don't have too much to say about this one. It kind of reminds me of like Lex a little bit, just with the absurdism,
A
but
little
this is
bit.
a
I
lot more self-aware
mhm.
and a lot more.
I got
And
some
I
old
I I
doc.
think if it
Go.
weren't for like yeah. Oh, sure, yeah, okay, yeah. Doctor Who, it definitely has a lot of those kind of things. Maybe I'm not so familiar with what it's parodying exactly, and if I was around more British culture and saw more shows, I'd probably get a lot more, much more of a kick from it. I still enjoyed it, but I just didn't. I felt like there was a lot of stuff I just didn't quite get. Not that the jokes were that deep, but
No.
I think if it weren't for like the interview clips showing this self-awareness or like reflection of the show, Garth Marenghi kind of just self-aggrandizing himself. It's
Oh, I
that's where
love it.
that's my favorite part of the whole thing. It's just just his commentary on writing and saying the best butcher horror the best butcher horror books, and he's flipping through his own novels. I
Yeah.
fucking love that.
Oh,
Like it's
there
just
in the show,
perfectly
there's an
captures the
episode where
egotistical,
he's
self-important
reading the
like
book
writer.
and he has his characters talk about how great the book is. It's so good.
Yes.
And
Oh
every
my
time
God.
it shows him coming down the stairs, they shoot it at a low angle to make him look like almighty and powerful. Oh, that's definitely my favorite part too.
Oh yeah.
And Richard Ayoade being a fucking psychopath. You just find out some of his interviews, he just casually mentions beating the child on set. And I don't know if this was the monkey episode.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That
It was horrifying, but
Yeah.
also really
I
funny.
remember that.
But I don't know if you noticed this, but when he's going through all of the room of the boxes that are just labeled water, because that's how every bottled water is labeled in a workplace facility. He's
Yep.
walking by, and in the mirror shot, it's just Richard Ayoade, implying that the crew left because he beat the child. But it's just so subtle. Like, it's a blink and miss it
Oh,
moment,
God.
and I just love that kind of comedy, and that's sprinkled all throughout the show. There's just so much detail
It's
into it.
it's very dry humor, but it's a good example of how you can paint a whole absurd picture with very little. Like you just have a little bit of dialogue, you just have this one shot and one offhanded remark, and it just kind of speaks to, how the whole situation was. And I like that kind of it's like painting a fictional history of the show that doesn't exist and how awful and tumultuous its production was by just through a couple lines of dialogue and the way certain characters act. I think the guy that played David Lerner was hilarious. I like his character moments and his voice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of nasally voice.
Richard
is too
Ayoade.
fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Funny.
He's so good.
yeah.
I love how every time he looks in the camera, it just cuts, implying that he was just looking in the camera going like line, line, and
Oh,
they just
yeah.
had to cut away from it. Like, that's what's amazing about the show. It doesn't exist, but I'm constantly wondering how the production went wrong. I'm wondering how the production went so wrong for a
Oh, yeah.
show that doesn't exist. And the fact they were able to capture that in a fake TV show for a comedy that wasn't made with all that much money. I mentioned that was expensive to make, and the reason for that is they went through the trouble of making it so authentic that they shot it on 35mm film. They shot this whole series on 35mm film and brought it down to a 16:9 aspect ratio. That's the level of detail they put into to make it look authentic, and I can really respect that.
To a 4:3 aspect ratio.
My apologies. Yes, it's 4:3.
4:3 aspect ratio.
Yeah, it says 16:9 IMDb
Yeah.
for some reason, but no, 4:3 sounds more right.
I thought they just thought I thought they shot this on TV cameras, like old school TV cameras. It didn't look like film to me, but I guess it didn't look necessarily like film to me. I would have thought they'd shoot it on like 16mm, maybe. Interesting.
But yeah, 35mm film, and that's probably another reason it was canceled. It was just too expensive to shoot on film, and they probably learned that very quickly during production.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah, it says aspect ratio 16:9 on IMDb, which is bizarre because it's all a box. That just well
Yeah.
maybe maybe like when they when they broadcast it, they just have like effects on this look incomplete, if anything. Like it looks like your basic kind of let's just fill in its stereo mix color 69. I don't think they actually updated that on here on this particular one.
No.
Because I would say that's inaccurate from what I see.
Well, there isn't much trivia on IMDb either, which is why it was so hard to find out information. I had to use other sources. I had to go to Wikipedia. Oh, it's so terrible. But
Oh no.
I think the
Cite
moment,
your sources
yeah, I think the moment
and
where the
or cite
show
Wikipedia sources.
really won me over was that amazing shootout at the end of the first episode. Like every little detail
Oh
about that
yeah.
scene, the long, awkward walk where they don't cut away from the camera from a straight minute, the fact that like sometimes you'll see Dean Lerner shooting a shotgun into the air. And then it will cut back to him with both hands in his pockets. The fact that he waits for the main character waits for the mother to get in the way before shooting, even though he had like 10 seconds to shoot beforehand, and pulling out a flamethrower out of his ass. I was just that was the moment where I was just like, this is the greatest show ever made. This is so entertaining, and it never feels like it tries too hard. Like that's the thing with a lot of
Right.
movies and shows that try to be bad, is that it just feels like they are incredibly excessive. But there's just so much here that's so dry and so subtle, and it moves by so fast and never lingers on any like joke or gag or shitty quality of filmmaking for too long, that even the parts that don't
Mm-hmm.
work, which there were very few parts that didn't work for me in this show, it just zooms by that you can't even really be mad at it.
Right on. And I remember watching the first episode. I was in the break room at work, and he goes to shake the woman's hand, and he just starts screaming, and I nearly spat my drink, and tried to contain myself, like
that
from laughing
was
too hard.
that was great. No,
Just,
Matt Berry
just you
and
know,
the
just
show.
the I love the very sudden like montages that they just go into, where like just all these camera zooms and sound effects and just and just the way they overdo it. It's so fucking funny.
Oh, I know. And Matt Berry is my favorite character on this show. He's the guy with the eyebrows. I keep forgetting his character's name. His eyebrows, his hair, and his voice each deserve an individual Oscar. Like, his voice is just the perfect mix of
Oh yeah.
really monotone and so over the top. Like, I don't know how he pulls off both techniques at once, but it just really works together for this kind of shit, like intentionally shitty TV show. I love how like edgy Garth Marenghi's character is when they're like, I can see into the past, the present, and the future. Tough gig. Stop being sarcastic. And for no reason, he's just like, maybe if everyone you loved and know died, you'd be sarcastic too. Like he's just mean to her for no reason, which is another common gag in the show. Everybody's such a dick to the main female character. Like Garth Marenghi clearly has no idea how to write women, so every scene is like, oh, I just want to get my makeup done. I just want to get my hair done. I just want to hook up with boys and behind the curtain with awesome, awful ADR. And this. And like that attention to detail carries on to the
Yeah.
commentaries as well. Like it's such a great companion piece to that. And Dean Lerner just casually mentioning that he probably murdered the main actress. And he's like, oh, she spoke to me from the dead, and she said, use a vow. And she was what? I did. I did use a vow. That's a good
Jesus.
episode to end on, man.
I
Like
mean,
that
it's details
ending
like
just
that.
sent me laughing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's details like that you can miss if you don't pay attention. But I think it rewards subsequent viewings. Like you just kind of put it on maybe casually, but there's a little more to it than you might expect. And yeah, I think it's quite admirable for that. It
Hmm.
reminded me of I was just thinking of like British dry humor and shows that I've seen. Have you ever seen Brass Eye?
I've heard about it, and I haven't gotten the chance to watch it yet, unfortunately.
So it's like a comedically dark parody of 60 Minutes. So it's like these fake news stories that they go into deep detail into. And there's this one episode that has circulated online in clips, and uh, you would get canceled today if you made it. But I think that the comedy of it is just so pitch black and perfect that it's forgivable. It's called Pedogeddon, and it's about the epidemic of pedophilia in Britain. And there's like a line where it says, "How come we can't think of the British Isles without the word paid off in front of it?" It's just so.
I'll check it out.
And there's it's awful, but it's brilliant as well.
It sounds
And just the
amazing.
way they edit it and the way it's like this dry humor that's just barraged and cut together in such a slapstick way, and it perfectly parodies like the sensationalist journalism of American, news shows, even the ones that take themselves more seriously, like 60 Minutes. I think it just perfectly parodies all that, and I'll put a clip in the server, but it's too damn funny, and it did remind me a little bit of that, some of that British humor. Like the British humor can be pretty hit or miss for me. One that I absolutely love is Hot Fuzz, which is a film,
Of
obviously
course,
from
one of the best.
Edgar Wright. Like I love that brand of it. Some other stuff is just a little too maybe out there or dry, or I just don't get the reference because maybe they're being like political to what's
Referential,
happening there.
yeah.
Um, but yeah. If it's specifically referential to something of British culture, I might miss it because I've never been over there, or I don't know what the contemporary political situation is or whatever they might be commenting on. So, but I admire it from afar.
Yeah, it's humor is just very different in different cultures. Like Chinese humor is like very, very, very over the top. Like if you think humor is over the top in America, it's just ridiculously over the top there. American humor relies a lot on
Oh,
dialogue and kind of gross out humor. Canadian humor is do we even have a brand of Canadian humor? It's just different depending on where you go, and I'm sure they think our sense of humor is just as weird as we think their sense of humor is. It it's part of what
yeah. It's
makes
like our,
cinema
our
comedy
sense
so
of humor
fascinating.
is either our sense of humor is either so morbid or so like subtle. Most people are like, was that even a joke? Like they don't know. And that's kind of the odd thing about it. It's like it's either so dry or it's so morbid that it's hard to tell if we're joking or not.
Yeah,
Um,
sometimes you're just wondering
that
if
or
they're.
it's just that or it's just so obvious, like a very unenthusiastic kind of dad joke where you just play it way too safe.
Hmm.
I see that kind of comedy here as well, and it's like you're not even trying.
Yeah, I know. Like put some
I
effort
think we
into it.
just
We're the dead
oh
babies,
yeah,
man.
but
Speaking of dead babies, what
oh Jesus.
which episode would you say? More on episode 3 later. Which episode would you say is your favorite out of what you've seen?
I mean I think the one that took me off guard that I think just sticks out of my mind the most right now is when he has that squid baby thing. It reminded me a little bit of Suicide Squad. No, without getting into spoilers, the new Suicide Squad.
Okay. In
So
a weird way, I guess. Yeah, and
maybe that's
I was watching this with my mother, and when they broke out into song, she could not stop laughing. She was just laughing so hard at that we actually had to pause the show, and then we showed it again, and Matt Berry is just like, I got written on paper, and it shows the paper saying written on paper, and she was gone again, and I had to pause. Like every 5 minutes in that episode, we had to keep pausing. But
that's good.
if I had to pick out of what you've seen, at
It,
least, episode
it's a
2.
good episode.
Episode 2 is just hysterical to me. Like that's
Okay.
that's where like the idea of Garth Marenghi having no idea how to write women just comes into focus. Stephen Merchant's cameo was
Mm-hmm.
hysterical, where he has to beat, almost forgets his cue, and then slaps the dinner onto the floor, and the extra who's like, "But Rook," just a really shitty actor, and Matt Berry pulling out a gun and shooting his other gun only for that to come up, and that probably has my favorite commentary bit where Dean Lerner's like, well, yes, you can see the wires, but think of it as a puppet show. If you're looking at the wires, you're ignoring the story. Like, just this complete bullshit response to make up for how bad the special effects are.
Yeah.
That it was just sent me laughing, and it's like everything that
Oh yeah.
what didn't have dialogue was
I
considered for
remember.
slow motion.
Um, oh that yeah that was absurd. It's good.
And they just admit to having blatant
But
padding in the show. I
oh
love it.
man, there was another bit. There was another bit of dialogue. There was another bit of dialogue or advice that Garth was saying that I'm trying to remember that I thought was actually really funny. Saying, what I think this episode proves, or what I was trying to prove is there's no there's no stopping the human spirit. Like if I don't have paper, I'll write in the wind or
Yeah.
something, and it's not ideal conditions. It was it was something to that effect. It's like
Yeah, that's
he
about right.
can't stop him from writing, and also the fact that he's written more than he's read,
Yeah, which
very
is yeah, if that's possible. And
very evident. It
I
reminds me
yeah.
of the it reminds me of the dry British humor in Spinal Tap. It reminds me very much of Spinal
Yeah,
Tap, which
that's a good
I remember
point.
when I first watched it, I just kind of went, "Huh?" Like it didn't strike me as funny the first time I saw it, but every time subsequently watching it after that, I found it hysterical.
Yeah, I
So
agree with that.
it kind of reminded me of that.
I do love This is Spinal Tap. That would make a good
Apparently, we got
recommendation.
somebody listening.
Yeah, hello there. Thank you for listening in. We are currently talking about Garth Marenghi's Dark Place and how spectacular it is. And the best part of episode 2 for me by far was uh, the ADR in that episode is just special. Like, they keep reusing Stephen Merchant's son of a bitch line 3 times, even when he gets stabbed by a fork. They just used the ADR line son of a bitch again. And Garth Marenghi gets Tom Cruised. He looks way shorter,
Yeah, I
and
remember
Dealer
that.
looks way taller. They just fucked up the tripod shot. Uh, like the amount of detail
Incredible.
put into this to make it look
They didn't have those
bad,
Apple boxes, right?
it's insane to me. Like
Yeah.
all of the details, the bad special effects, the ADR. It sounds like it's from the 80s. Like that's a detail you never see in like 80s nostalgic like TV shows or movies. Like the sound, it sounds like it was recorded on a crappy boom mic that would have been from the 80s. Like even just details like that just add so much to
Yeah,
the experience and humor.
it definitely sounds like they recorded on like lower grade tape. Um,
Hmm.
and it just feels authentic, like they filmed it exactly the way that they would back in the day, with some, subpar digital effects thrown on top. It's just it's a fun time. If it seems like something that you'd be into, then you'd probably be into it. Just cheesy 80s mockumentary of a medical drama that doesn't exist, and it
Hmm.
has a lot of supernatural stuff that happens. It's a good time.
It is a very good time.
Perfect for if it's 3 a.m. watching an Adult Swim.
Yeah, perfect for the whole family. No adult content in this show whatsoever. If I had to nitpick about it, and these are very tiny nitpicks because otherwise I think the show is perfect. There's a couple of jokes I thought were a little too over the top for what it was going for. Like what makes the show so funny to me is that it feels like it could be like a shitty it's 80s sci-fi show that could exist in a period of time or in like an alternate reality, but the jokes were it's like I had to give the actor had problems with the scene and I had to convince him who was in charge. It just cuts to the shot of the eyeball with the dildo, or just talking about the chick's death. Those were funny, but they were like, it's kind of like the situation of the cops in Superbad, where it feels a little bit out of the ordinary, like what you'd expect from. It kind of took me out of the this feels like a shitty film that could exist in a different period of time. It just reminds me that it's just an absurd comedy again, which it's still funny and well delivered, but it pulled
Hmm.
me out of the experience just a little bit. That's it though. Like you really have no other issues with it.
Alright. I mean, I wasn't laughing the entire time. A lot of jokes didn't quite land for me, or I just didn't find them probably as funny as I thought I should. But the stuff that did hit pretty hard, so it kind of made up for that.
Oh,
But there
that's
were like long stretches where I just kind of lost focus, I guess. I was doing a few other things while this was on, but
yeah. It wasn't quite
I
earning
was
your
enjoying
attention.
it still.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's alright though. It
Yeah.
happens. But not every comedy has to be like a flawless masterpiece. Like even comedies
Oh,
I
yeah.
really like, I don't necessarily find funny to appreciate them. Like I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't think The World's End is like the funniest movie in the world, but I still appreciate like the level of effort put behind a lot of the gags. I still appreciate the character work. Like there's so much I can appreciate that even if I'm not laughing a mile a minute, I could still love the movie and I still appreciate it nonetheless.
Oh yeah, and especially for Edgar Wright, like he puts a lot of work into the filmmaking itself that there's so much else you can appreciate in the storytelling and
Hmm.
the cinematography and just the way the whole thing's put together. He looks for opportunities to tell jokes outside of just what the characters are saying, where a lot of comedies just kind of have They just kind of set up a camera and they have the actor improvise like lines in between like the lines of the script, and they just kind of cut it together, and that's it.
Hmm.
Um, where Edgar Wright really, makes it like a movie that just happens to have, this kind of humor in it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think that applies to this as well. Like, there's so much about like the shitty filmmaking details and the running joke, like visual gags of the fact that they zoom into the building, but they can never get the zoom in right, so they just have to pan the camera at the last minute to try and get into the window they were aiming for in the first place. Like, so many visual gags, so much attention to detail, so much interesting character backgrounds with the interviews that.
Oh, and I appreciate that too, because as a camera person, you kill yourself over nail a shot, or you know, if you're trying to zoom in on a certain window, and nail the focus, and then maybe you're lost of where it is. It's just fun to see that kind of in a final product, because it makes you feel a little better about what you've done. um,
Exactly, yeah.
or what you've been able to pull off. It's just it's fun to see those kind of camera mistakes, because they're super relatable.
Mm, agreed. Yeah, I think that's it for what I want to talk about on this show. You should definitely check out episode 5 and 6. I love it. It's amazing. It's probably the funniest show I've ever seen. There's so much meat on its bones beyond just the humor, just the visual detail of it being intentionally bad cinema, and like I said, the great character work behind the scenes that just makes it so fascinating to watch, and almost makes you wish this was a production that existed. I'm giving this one my third 10 out of 10 on this channel. What would you give Garth Marenghi's Dark Place?
Oh wow.
Yeah, I love it that much. I've watched
I'll
it twice.
well, I'm gonna hold some reservations, because I haven't finished the entirety of it. That's how scheduling just worked for me this week. It's been kind of rough, but hopefully things will clear up soon, um, on my end, and we'll be back on our normal schedule hopefully. But for what I've seen and the enjoyment that I have gotten out of it, it's not the greatest thing that I've seen, but I still enjoyed it kind of casually. I'm comfortable giving it a 6.9.
Nice. Very nice. I'm glad you watched it. I hope you enjoyed the last two episodes, buddy. Because it is a the last
Will
two
do.
episodes are probably the most insane, believe it or not. Like, episode 5 is
And
probably my
I,
second favorite.
I'm glad that I'm glad that you recommended it, because I had seen clips of it before, and I'm like, what is this show? I've never seen this. And for some reason, I just never looked into it, or I couldn't find it. I assumed that, they were just these like clips from a skit show. But I remember seeing like those clips out of context and finding them really funny. So it was kind of cool to see like the whole show that it was from.
Yeah, it's one of those shows where I guarantee people have at least seen clips for it on YouTube by now. It's just gathered such a cult following behind it, which is so ironic because that's basically what the show is like centering on for its fake documentary segments. Next up,
Oh yeah, and it's crazy to think it happened way back in 2004. Also,
I know, like, it's
like
so ahead
before
of
the
its
internet was
time.
really a huge thing.
Like, this was basically a
And
movie
and and
before
yet
memes were a
and yet
thing.
nostalgic for a time. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's behind its time and ahead of its time at the same time.
And nails both ends perfectly. Would you like to
I, I,
introduce
I feel I
Beetlejuice?
feel like one of the characters on the show trying to explain. Yes, I would. I would like to introduce Beetlejuice.
Go for it.
So, Beetlejuice. I don't. I. It's really hard to introduce this film. I mean, this is a classic film from Tim Burton. I don't think this was the film that put Tim Burton on the map. That was probably Edward Scissorhands. I think he made, or did he make Edward Scissorhands after this? Can't remember. But
Batman. He made Batman
anyway,
before this. Like, that's probably what put him on the map.
and also Frankenweenie. I think the original. Um,
Oh yeah, and I think he
so
made Vincent
Tim Burton is a
as well.
okay. So he's been around. Tim Burton's is an interesting filmmaker. He's been around quite a bit. He's always had this kind of gothic yet child-friendly aesthetic throughout his entire career, and he's become kind of ubiquitously known for it. But he's also, had close ties with Disney over the years. Like I said, he made that short originally, Frankenweenie, which became a feature film later on. Money and funding for it. and one of these films is Beetlejuice, which was probably the first film of his that I had ever seen as a young kid, and I just absolutely fell in love with this film when I first saw it. For some reason, I never got around to watching Tim Burton's other movies. This and Batman. I remember seeing. So if you don't know the story, Beetlejuice, it's about a husband and wife played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, who get into a car accident, and unbeknownst to them, they actually died in that car accident, and they start haunting their original house and are surprised to find that other people have moved into it, and so they try to scare them off. Um, Alec Baldwin, back when he was his character, back when when he was alive, was a miniature model maker, and he made a miniature model of I believe it's of the hometown that they're in, or
Yeah, it's the whole
it's
town.
actually been a while since I've seen it. I've seen it so many times. Yeah, I've seen this thing so many times, so I'm just going off of like lucid memory.
Fair
But
enough.
yeah, he made a miniature model of the whole town, and somewhere they find an instruction manual, a book to guide people into the afterlife. Um, and they learn about this person named Beetlejuice who can help them figure out how to haunt these new people that moved into their house away. And so it's kind of like saying Bloody Mary 3 times. They say Beetlejuice enough times in a row, and suddenly he's summoned, and he's played by Michael Keaton, which it made sense that Tim Burton made Batman before this, because he's working with Michael Keaton again in this, and I think this is one of my favorite roles of Michael Keaton, just as this
Agreed.
gnarly character.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen
Yeah,
this movie since I was a kid, and you know how long it's been since I've
really.
seen this movie? I didn't remember the main characters died. That's how little I remember about this movie. I was genuinely surprised when that
Wow.
happened, and my mom was like, I was like, so when does the car crash happen? I'm like, car crash? What car crash? It's like, oh yeah, you haven't seen it in a while. I'll shut up now. But yeah, watching it again, I remember loving it as a kid, just loving the style and the art direction. The only thing I remember is the climax, where he's trying to get married to Winona Ryder's character and gets eaten by the sandworm, which may or may not be a reference to Dune. You decide. And I don't think it quite
Hmm.
holds up as well on the second watch, but I still really enjoyed it nonetheless. Like, you're right, Michael Keaton's performance is just insanely good in this movie. I feel like in another life he could have played the Joker. He could have played the Joker just as well as Jack Nicholson, because that's basically what he does in this movie. He's just the Joker meets a Tim Burton character, they hate fucked, and they made Beetlejuice. And it's a beautiful thing to see. So much so that he was ad-libbed 90% of his lines. I'm reading on IMDb, and it really does feel that way because he easily sounds
Wow.
like the most natural character in the movie, despite how like horrible and funny and goofy he is. But that's part of what makes him so entertaining. It's just you love. He's such a douchebag, and he's such a douchebag for no reason, but you just love to hate his character. He strikes that balance perfectly without ever feeling obnoxious.
Oh yeah. I think this was probably, if Michael Keaton never had the desire to play the Joker, this was probably scratching that itch for him, where he gets to play just this outrageous, character who hel- helps guide people who recently died, and tries to get out into the real world himself, which would be nightmarish to say the least. I
Mm-hmm.
was just reading this other fact here. The studio originally wanted to call the film House Ghosts as a joke, but as a joke, Tim Burton suggested the name Scared Sheetless, and was horrified when the studio actually considered using it.
It's
That
like,
actually
guys, I
that
was
actually would
joking.
have been a great alternate title.
That would have been interesting
Scared
alternate title.
Sheetless. That's
Yeah,
fun.
it wouldn't have spoiled like who the villain was of the
But
movie, at least.
true. But I think Beetlejuice just has like an iconic ring to it. It's a unique name, and it has that ugh
Mm-hmm.
kind of
It
factor,
just
like
sounds
right out the
really
gate with
gross.
if
Yeah.
if you just think of like a squish beetle and the It sounds really gross, but kind of, but kind of harmless at the same
It's
time. Well, unless you're
fascinating.
the beetle, then you've been
Yeah,
permanently maimed
sounds kind of
if you
fascinating
have
and
juices
painful.
leaking out of you.
And they do a great job of building
But
up to his
I,
character. I love how like you only see him through like crappy commercials and like bits and pieces like from his back or him talking to a beetle. It's like a really clever way of like building up anticipation for like the final reveal of this character, and it just makes the payoff of seeing him just act batshit insane on more worthwhile. Which is good because I really don't give a shit about any of the human characters in this movie. I have that written down in my notes. And I'm like,
oh
just
yeah.
God, these main characters are so boring. And I think, like, I get
Well,
the film
I don't
isn't
think
taking
I don't think
itself
we're supposed
too.
to like the family that have come in.
Well, no, like not them in particular. Like you're definitely, yeah, they're definitely going for that love to hate him sort of vibe. But even Alec Baldwin, the main wife, I just really couldn't care about. And I get the movie isn't taking itself too seriously. I get it's very playful and silly, which is definitely to the film's strengths. But I feel like I needed like a little bit more from their death. Like I didn't really feel much for it. Like I get it's a comedy, but even comedies like Shaun of the Dead know when to get serious and know when to handle like serious subject matter with enough gravity to make you care about the situation. They never really do that, and it's a very interesting exploration of death. It's very fun and entertaining exploration of death, but I don't really. It never feels like a death to me. It never feels like anything was lost. Besides the fact that they just have to watch their home get remodeled by these
I
the
will say watching it as a kid, you kind of do feel that more. Like it
I guess
feels
so.
scary or it feels more like on edge because you don't know what's gonna happen. So
Yeah,
watching, so I think watching this as a little kid, you definitely feel like more in that regard.
yeah,
But I
that's
do
fair.
think the whole drama with Winona Ryder's character was quite effective. The fact that she was suicidal, I
Yeah,
think early on is something that's a bit overlooked.
yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
I think that's played seriously enough for what it is, and I think it's
There's a great
it's
moment
subtle,
with
but
that
it's
too,
there.
where
And
Beetlejuice says, "Why?
she
Like why?" He's like, "I want to die." It's like, "Why?" And he like even Beetlejuice, someone as awful as terrible as Beetlejuice, like doesn't condone her suicide because he knows that just the afterlife is just completely miserable. I'm like, this was like a great like emotional beat, and I needed more moments like that instead of just being sprinkled in.
okay, I can understand that.
Yeah, but you're right as a kid because you have no idea how death works. So when these characters talk about death and all the different ways you can die, it is like a lot more horrifying and creepy. And the hospital scene like gave me nightmares as a kid, but nowadays I just laugh at it and how it's basically just a DMV. And
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of like anti-capitalist vibes in
basically,
this movie. Like Beetlejuice is basically
definitely,
a
it
sleazy
definitely is.
salesman that like wastes his time at whorehouses and screws people over. Like the whole place is like a DMV where you have to wait such a long period of time to find out the answers you're looking for, and the person you're working with is just doesn't care about you and has tons of other meanings to get to. And even like all of the evil characters are like renovators. Like the person who wants to buy the house at the beginning is such a bitch, and she wants to invade her privacy, and the fat guy just has no fashion sense whatsoever, but everybody just pats him on the back anyways. I see those anti-capitalist vibes
Well,
there, Tim Burton.
he certainly has he certainly has a certain like artistic choice or sense that he's very judgmental of how the decor of the house is, and they dress it up. It is kind of interesting looking with the whole chevron patterns and whatnot, but it's very
Mm.
gaudy kind of 80s like style. Um, but it definitely has its own kind of aesthetic quality to it. Um, and this is interesting because it reminded me. I remember we were watching The Adjuster, which Steven loved very very much.
Oh, so much.
But I remember I remember seeing Bubba sitting out on the back porch looking over kind of a mostly empty fields, reminding me a little bit of Beetlejuice for some reason, seeing that other fat guy looking over kind of the empty field in an open part of their house. So
Only
I don't
this
know
is a lot
why,
more
like
silly.
those scenes kind of reminded me of each other.
Yeah.
This is a lot more silly. The Adjuster's a lot more serious. Um,
Yeah, that's
but
fair.
I was just reading more facts here that are interesting. So, according to Michael Keaton, the Beetlejuice character was described to him by Tim Burton as, quote, having lived in every time period but no time period. Keaton used this as a jumping off point to create the character with such features as a shock hairdo, mold makeup, and large teeth. He said that when he first showed up to the set of Beetlejuice, the crew was chanting "Juice, juice, juice," and it got him kind of pumped for the
God,
role.
I want a gag reel of this movie so bad. Like, this movie must have been so much fun to make.
Same.
I always get a kick out of the what's the song, the Heyo scene, or what's the song they sing like when they
Deo.
Deo,
Deo.
that's it, the Deo scene. I get a kick out of that every time.
He
And the
said
act
that. He
said
said that.
Deo,
He
said
said
Deo.
Deo.
And
They're like, come and me wanna go home. They're like, come and me wanna go home.
Careful, we might get copyrighted. But
Hey, Charlie man, Charlie me banana.
Risking it.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
I'm probably singing it too well to get
yeah,
copyright
it's
strike.
perfect. But that scene is just really funny.
It's such a good scene. It's such a bizarre scene, but it's so iconic for this reason, just because it's so tonally adjacent to what you would expect. And it says that Tim Burton feared the sequence wouldn't go over well since in his opinion it wasn't very funny. He turned out to be wrong. Audiences loved it and think of it as one of the film's most iconic scenes, and I agree.
Yeah,
But
the
it's
actors
interesting
do
that Tim
such
Burton didn't
like
have
a
a lot
good
of faith in
job
that
of
scene.
yeah. It's always entertained to see that directors not having faith in certain scenes or certain actors, but it's just like the actors do such a good job of pretending to be possessed, and it's also kind of a fun way to save money. It's like, we don't have to animate ghosts behind them or anything along those lines. We could just have the actors do a dance. And I almost wonder if he did it to save money. I almost wonder, that's why he doesn't like it. He only did that because the budget just wasn't high enough for something different. But it works so well. And I also like the little wink that Catherine O'Hara's character gives directly to Winona Ryder to show, hey, this is what we're doing now. I also love the response too. Again, the movie doesn't take itself very seriously. Most people would be like, oh my god, a ghost, let's get out here. But they're like most people nowadays, and they're like, sweet, ghosts are here. Let's make some money off of it.
That's and that response is what's is the real cinch of it too. Is that they aren't so amazed by the supernatural phenomenon as how can we make a buck off of this? And that's part of the satire, the parody. It reminds me of RoboCop. How
a little bit, yeah. I got those vibes.
A little bit, just in terms of that kind of satire, where something tragic happens in that movie, where the first iteration of a mechanized police officer or law enforcement goes horribly wrong, and they're like, "This is gonna sink our investments." Not that this shot of Jerry or whoever the guy was in the fucking break room, conference room. So. It's that kind of comedy that I think has been influential. That kind of satirical take on capitalism.
That's also a very 80s thing because Wall Street was really big and popular and loathed at the time, and there were always tons of sleazy businessmen around. I think it was a very 80s thing to satirize that. I think the American Psycho book was written in the 80s, like Beetlejuice, RoboCop, Total Recall kind of had those vibes too. That kind of, and Wall Street was made in the 80s. Just lots of 80s movies tried to tackle that anti-capitalist vibe for sure. Because I think that was just a prominent part of their culture at the time. Still is now, but that's a different debate.
Oh yeah, it was very saturated, so there was a lot of potent opportunity to satirize it, and it works. It holds up quite well, I think. Another thing I was just reading, and this is I think true for any kind of iconic performance of a titular character. Michael Keaton, who's the main character, he's only in it for 14 minutes in total, 14.5 minutes of the film. It's like how Vito Corleone in The Godfather, who is the Godfather, he's only in that film for
20 minutes.
How long?
Just about. But yeah,
Probably.
They leave such an impact. I was watching this.
Or Alec Baldwin's character. Alec Baldwin's character in Glengarry Glen Ross. He has the most iconic scene that he won an Oscar for, and he's in it for 5 minutes.
The lead's weak.
I think there's a lesson here in quality of a scene. And if your character only needs to be in a film for so long, but just save it for those like moments of impact, then you can do a lot with that. He doesn't have to be in every single scene because then the whole gimmick can kind of die and wear out.
Roger Ebert, I was reading a review of his, said that this movie starts to be fun when it unleashes its trick. It's something along these lines, but it stops being fun when you realize that's all the movie has to offer is that one trick. And I don't feel as negative about the movie as he does, but I do kind of agree it is kind of a one-trick pony, and there really isn't much meat on its bones beyond that, which is fine. Like, it's not trying to be that way, but I don't quite feel for this film as much because of it. That's not to say, like, comedies can't make you feel more beyond the jokes and the visual splendor, but I didn't really get that vibe as much with Beetlejuice as I wanted to. But what visual splendor it does have, though, on a different note, like, there's lots of great, like, really fun practical effects, and even when they're dated, they still fit the aesthetic somehow, like the really goofy, carnival-esque, like, aesthetic it has. It still fits with that. Even, like, really dated shots of the sandworm CGI'd in doesn't look super great, but it just puts a smile on my face regardless. The set design is fantastic.
That's all stop motion, I'm pretty sure.
It is. It is stop motion with, like, blue screen effects. Like, the actors are blue screen.
I don't think there's any CG in this. This is the 80s.
Well, okay. It's not CG, but what they did is... Go on.
That's not CG, that's compositing.
That's compositing, anyway. My apologies.
Not to get technical, I just, like...
No, it's understandable.
Made sure that information is right.
The set design is great. Like, I love how the house changes over the course of the movie and gets kind of less familiar as it goes on. But it also kind of fits what the characters are going through as well. So it does have a thematic purpose to it. It isn't just, oh, Tim Burton just wants to be weird again.
No, I think there's a lot to be said there about, the time period and how people were changing and renovating things in their image and whatnot, and it's just a vibe, like the whole thing. I was reading something else here. So Glenn Shaddix, he's the guy that played the larger character. Who man, I feel like I should have watched the film just so I remember who these people are.
Hang on, let me.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Otho. Otho. So Glenn Shaddix played Otho, who actually died back in 2010. And the last song performed at his memorial service was Deo.
Oh, he also played the mayor in The Nightmare Before Christmas. Aw, man, that sucks.
Wow.
May he rest in peace. But yeah, he was probably like my favorite human character.
That's almost 11 years ago.
Yeah, I know. Time flies, man.
He's just the most memorable of all of them.
Because he knew what. The other characters are over the top, but he is just completely like, it's just, he might as well have like a pencil mustache on his face so he can twirl it in every other scene. Like, he's just that
this
level
is also
of
pretty
unlikableness. That's perfect.
The visual effects budget. I was just reading this. The visual effects budget was just $1 million. Just $1 million. The major factor in Tim Burton's deciding was to make the effects look as tacky and as B-movie as possible. So I think he was intentionally trying to make them look dated to have that aesthetic to it, like they're B-movie effects.
Okay.
Which I don't know. It oddly works. I think it works.
I
think it works in the film's favor for some reason. It feels a little more tactile, more hands-on. Like I could see the imprints on the claymation figures of the sandworm. I don't know. I like that.
Yeah, it's very charming.
But there was something else I was reading, and this kind of goes into our discussion of directors putting their wives in intimate scenes in their movies, or their significant others, girlfriends at the time. Which there's something to that we should probably delve into at some point. But it says, in the waiting room at the end of the film, the bottom half of the magician's assistant that Beetlejuice tries to feel up was played by Tim Burton's then girlfriend.
Oh.
Well then.
A fetish movie. It's like casting all those movies where his wife
are all
dates
directors
Johnny
cucks
Depp.
or what?
I know, right? It's like his movies where he filmed. It's like the Coen Brothers with Frances McDormand, who's always like married or someone else or dating someone else, we'll just have her date George Clooney and burn after reading. I won't
It's
be
always
feeling
rather
anything from that at
tasteful,
all.
I'd say.
Yeah, that's definitely more tasteful than this. Whereas, and you gotta keep in mind, Tim Burton's behind the camera. Michael Keaton likely improvised touching her leg, and it was just like, no, keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling. this is good stuff. Something else I want to mention: the music. Oh, the music is so good in this movie, so iconic. It feels like creepy and like really silly and over the top all at once, but I have a soft spot for Danny Elfman ever since Nightmare Before Christmas, so maybe I'm just biased, but the opening titles at the very least have been
Oh,
very iconic
Danny
for a lot of
Elfman's
people.
legendary.
Yeah, absolutely. He's earned.
Danny Elfman is a legendary composer. He's collaborated with Tim Burton on so many of these scores, but he also has branched off and made his own music. Have you heard any of Danny Elfman's original music?
I think you showed me one. I forget what it was called, but it was a really strange,
Yeah.
trippy
So
music video for it.
back in the '80s, he had an act called Oingo Boingo, where he has made some very interesting music. One of which is a song that's a little on the nose and a bit problematic. Ding ding ding. There's that word.
He said it.
I'm not gonna sing it here, but if you look at Boingo, if you look at Boingo Boingo, you'll find what I'm talking about. But yeah, more recently he's done some music that he calls chamber punk, and it is just so bizarre and surreal. He has a song called Happy, which sounds like,
That's it.
if you listen to it, it sounds like you're slowly going insane. And then the one song that he has that I really like is Kick Me, which if I had to describe in a sentence, I think describes the sometimes sadomasochistic parasocial relationship that celebrities can develop with their fans. If you listen to the lyrics, you'll know what I mean.
It's very different from his composed music as well. Like when you go like, "Oh, I love Danny
It is.
Elfman," and it's like happy-go-lucky, like weird, bizarre movie scores. This is nothing like those scores. If you're going in expecting that kind of work, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. I don't think you'll be disappointed. I think, well, I hope you wouldn't. It's like Danny Elfman listened to Death Grips and it's like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, I could
Like
do this.
it has that Danny Elfman signature orchestration in it. It's just more unhinged, and I think it's incredible.
I want to mention real quick, there are, again, it's a comedy, but there are some like plot conveniences that did kind of irk me a little bit. Like, hey, lady, if you don't want them to summon Beetlejuice, maybe don't tell them how to summon Beetlejuice. You know, just a pro tip from one professional to another. And the film didn't even need to do that. Like, clearly they made that scene to tell the audience, oh, here's how you summon Beetlejuice. You just say his name 3 times. But they already did that. In that crappy commercial, he mentions just say the name 3 times, and I'll come running. So it's like, okay, so the audience knows. I don't really understand that decision. My mom was just like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. When that scene come on, that was so. It just makes no sense for a character
I think
to
at
do
that point, I think at that point the cat was already out of the bag, so she was just trying to do damage control. But human psychology, if you tell someone not to do it, they're probably gonna do it.
Exactly, and on top of that, when they try to stop Beetlejuice at the end, amazing climax. Michael Keaton is hilarious when he pulls out the dead girl's finger. He's like, "She didn't mean anything to me, honey." I laughed pretty hard at that. But why do they say Beetlejuice's name so slow? Like every time, like they put the zipper on Gina Davis's face, or he's just about to put the metal bar on it. I'm just like, she says Beetlejuice, and she pauses. And I'm like, no, say Beetlejuice 2 more times. You have like 10 seconds here. Say Beetlejuice 10 more times. I'm thinking that may have been a filmmaking thing though, like the way they had to cut the scene together.
I imagine it was just to build tension.
Yeah, also to build tension.
It was just to build tension in the scene.
Yeah, for sure. But it was
and it's effective. But yeah.
A little bit dumb, but that's it. Like it's fun. It's a really fun movie. It didn't quite connect with me as much as Tim Burton's other movies, but it didn't really need to either. It's got one trick up its sleeve, but it's a damn good trick, so it's hard to argue. I think I'm done talking about Beetlejuice. I don't really have much else to add. It's good. It's fun. Michael Keaton's amazing. Basically, what everyone already knows about Beetlejuice.
Oh yeah, it's just a cozy, nostalgic movie for me. It gives me the Halloween vibes and
Hmm.
reminds me of being a little kid again. Um, it's not the greatest film of all time, and I don't watch it, and I don't watch it every year, but I always enjoy it when I do.
Nice. What would you give Beetlejuice out of 10?
I give it the same one I gave the Dark Place. It's a 6.9. That's a comfort movie like rating for me.
Yeah. If I was rating it on how much fun I had, I'd give it like an 8 or an 8.5, but if I'm gonna be my more serious, anal, pretentious self, I think I'm gonna give it the same. 7 out of 10. 6.9. It's a very nice movie.
There you go.
Very nice movie, and Michael Keaton is way too horny for me to handle. This movie could not get made today, which is, adds a bit to the charm of it for me, I suppose.
Well, now that you mention it, I just remembered this. So I was talking with Steven, who our dearly departed Steven, rest in peace. He's dying of heat in
pepperoni.
Arkansas right now. But before he keeled over, he said, "Devin, I have an important factoid of Beetlejuice that I want you to share on the podcast before I keel over and die from not having AC." And it's the troubled production hell of Beetlejuice 2. If you look on IMDb, there's a page for Beetlejuice 2 that they've been wanting to make for years, but no one's ever done it. No one's made it. And if you want to know the plot synopsis, it's Beetlejuice in Hawaii. And there's a couple in Hawaii who tries to summon him, and he eventually gets absorbed into a volcano, and he becomes Jucifer.
That sounds like the greatest movie ever.
Right? And it's just like, it's on the onset when I hear that they want to make a Beetlejuice 2, and it's like, why? I mean, the original is just kind of a fun movie in and of itself. It sounds kind of dumb on the onset, but when I hear that plot, I'm like, this sounds so stupid, I have to see it.
I know. It's like, I feel like with the right director, it could work. Like, if someone like Edgar Wright directed it, or if someone like, I don't know, the guy who did Psycho Goreman directed it, I feel like it could just be like a really fun movie. As long as it didn't take itself too seriously, as long as it
I would like to see that.
Like, too worried about offending people, because Beetlejuice 1 has some quote-unquote offensive humor to it as well. Part of the reason why I said you couldn't not make the movie today. Lots of suicide jokes. We'll just leave it at that. But
the whole whorehouse scene.
Yes, that was. I'm like, this is a PG movie, Mr. Burton. And that's the only thing that could distract him. It's like, the whorehouse was my idea. But speaking of kids' movies with adult humor, Paranorman! Stop motion animated movie by Laika. It's the only one I haven't seen. Is it okay if I introduce this one as well, or do you want to?
This is the only one. Yes, I do want to say this is the only one so far that I have seen, and I'm very glad that I did. Tell us about it.
So, quick story first. So, when I was in the hospital way back for surgery, I was incredibly miserable. I was in constant pain, all that fun stuff. You know, it's a hospital, what else do you expect? But there was one collection of films that brightened up my day. It was on VHS because the DVD selection they had sucked. It was Wallace and Gromit. Not just the Wallace and Gromit shorts, but the full Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Brer Rabbit movie as well, that I haven't seen up until that point. So I watched those on a loop constantly, and I'd have to say those movies easily ignited my love for the craft of stop motion animation and all of the hard work that goes behind it, and all of the charming, weird, bizarre stories and situations you can make from such an animation style. So of course it wasn't long before I was latched onto The Nightmare Before Christmas, and then onto Coraline, which took me a while to appreciate Coraline, but now it's generally one of my favorite animated movies. So I was curious to see what else the studio was up to, which brings us to Paranorman, the only Laika film I have not seen up until recently. What's Paranorman about? Well, it's about a kid named Norman. Yeah, huge plot twist, I know. He's the only one in his town who can speak with the dead, and of course everybody hates him, everybody thinks he's a weirdo. No, everybody's just freaked out by his abilities altogether, or they just simply can't comprehend the fact that he can speak to those who are dead. The family gets particularly offended whenever he brings up the dead grandmother in particular. So one day, Uncle Jim, his name's not Uncle Jim, but what's his character's name? I'm terrible with names. Mr. Pendergast comes to him and says, "You need to read this book to stop the witch's curse." And after Mr. Pendergast passes away, he begs the Norman to do so in his afterlife, and Norman very reluctantly agrees. Unfortunately, a little bit of a mistake causes a bunch of zombies to rise from the ground, and a panic in the town ensues, as you'd expect. I had no idea what to think about this one going in. I heard kind of mixed opinions about it. Some people loved it, some people loved the animation, but nothing about the story or the characters. And I gotta say, like I like this film a lot more than I expected. I'm sure it's not like the most original film out there. Parts of it are kind of derivative, but it's got so much hurt to it. It's not afraid to be dark and edgy, and I have to say the second half of this movie was incredibly profound with some really profound villains, which we'll get to in a second, and I even got a little misty-eyed in the climax, which that too I really wasn't expecting. Animation just doesn't move me that way most of the time, and when a film does that, I always gotta give it extra credit for doing so. But I'm rambling. So, what did you think of this movie?
As did I. I mean, I remember seeing the trailer for this back when it came out, and the tone and the pacing of the trailer was really stuck out from everything else you get used to, because you're used to hearing all the dun 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 dun, like all the hard bass hits and all these things to grab your attention. That if you watch it kind of on TV on a bad sound system, I kind of tune out of a lot of modern trailers just because they're all going with that same kind of formula. Where Paranorman, I remember the way they marketed it, where they just play Season of the Witch, and it's a very dun dun dun, very kind of calm, kind of laid back song that builds up in intensity, and they just had these lingering shots from the film, and it's just like, wow, what a way to market the film. It's just, it just kind of invites you into the atmosphere of the world that they've created for these things. And everything in this and the animation is so immaculately detailed. Like every part of the frame is just filled with some interesting detail. Like the amount of work that went into the construction and the building and the lighting of this, it just looked incredible. This reminded me of when I saw Klaus, which was an
Really?
animated film I knew nothing about or very little about. It's apart from one YouTube video going in, and I was just delightfully surprised by, the craft and the storytelling and the craft and the art direction and everything that went into it. Just so much love and passion went into it, and it's not going out of it's not trying to grab your attention. It's just inviting you in to its world. I find so I really appreciate. Like I just remembered that trailer first, and even though I didn't see the movie, I saw it years later, and it just had a solid kind of vibe to it that I just resonated with. And watching the film itself, it supports that. Like, yeah, I just really liked this film and the way that the story kind of unfolded with these characters. I like that he's talking to all these dead people that and they kind of bury the lead a little bit where it just seems like grandma's in the living room hanging out with him. I love that the very first shot of the film is like this cheesy horror movie that he happens
Yes.
to be watching, and they have all these awkward stops and places where they would cut.
Looks at the camera.
The boom mic dips into the boom mic dips into the shot, and it's not even in the right place where a boom mic would be. Like the boom mic should be above her. This comes in from the side, and she just pushes it away. But I love that comical exaggeration of it, because I imagine if I was watching this as a little kid, I wouldn't understand what that was, but I would find it funny, just the timing of it. And something like that, if I was a young kid watching this, it might pique my curiosity. Like, what was that thing that dipped into the shot, and what was that awkward pause there? Like, it might just be peeling away the facade of the filmmaking a little bit. Like, it's like someone watching Super 8 and seeing how the whole process is done of making a movie with just your friends or whatever. And so I like that. That was like the introduction to the film, was just like cheesy recreation of like a zombie movie that he's just watching, casually. I hate his dad in this movie. His dad is a
Oh
dick.
yeah,
I guess.
he's my least favorite character. I think.
I mean, I think he played. I think he played an important role of being the uh, i- ignorant. I don't understand my son, and
Yeah,
I am an idiot. Just kind of role. Like he wasn't malicious. He was just arrogant.
stuck up.
I found,
Yeah,
and I think it gave Norman motivation to be heard elsewhere or to explore outside because I would hate to be growing up with somebody who is that arrogant.
hmm
But I think that gives a necessary point of motivation for Norman to seek understanding from other people and to connect with other people. Um,
that's fair.
and talk with his grandma more, even though she's dead.
hmm
Um, and in the living room, I like the way that they presented like the dead people as just people that uh just had kind of unfinished business in their life, and they and I guess we'll get into the spoilers here, but there's a curse on the town, um, from what we find out is a young girl who was
Yeah,
wrongfully prosecuted, or really just I guess she was prosecuted for practicing witchcraft, and they executed a young girl for over that. So she, swore vengeance on the whole town for it, which is quite an intense plot point. And I think I agree with you. I kind of welted up at the climax of it. Not only like the emotional story, like the arcing there, but the way they used the music too. The music was done by Byron,
John
who
Bryan.
has done John Bryan. God damn, I can't speak today.
No, no, you got
Who
it.
did one of my favorite original music scores for Internal Sunshine
Yeah,
of the Spotless
and
Mind, amongst
Synecdoche.
others. But the music, and I need to see Synecdoche. We got to cover that one.
Yeah, that would be a good episode.
Just to get into Charlie Kaufman's work,
hmm
because and I thought the music in that climax was great. It actually reminded me of The Fountain a little bit with the imagery of the tree and the
Yeah,
way
the
she was
yellow,
glowing
the use of
and
yellow.
kind of well, yeah, but also just like the theme of connecting to this person who has died and trying to show that someone's listening and someone cares for them. Something about that just got me, just all something about this just got me emotional,
So
like
well
being
done.
heard from beyond the grave. I don't know, and it gave me that kind of feeling of the fountain, even and the music supported that with the strings. Like they sounded very much like the climax of the fountain, and that's one of my favorite films of all time. So
Nice.
yeah, that I think everything leading up to that was worthwhile, even if parts of the movie I wouldn't say they dragged, but it took me a while to get. Well, I was having technical issues watching this movie because it wasn't listed on Netflix Canada. I had to use a VPN to try to watch it on Netflix US.
You broke the
You know,
law.
going the legal route to watch. No, I went the legal route to watch this. I pay and subscribe for a VPN. I pay and subscribe for Netflix, and I'm
Fuck
trying to
Goofy.
use them, in tandem. But it kept booting me, which sucks. Which really kind of made it kind of hindered my watching of this movie, unfortunately. But it was a worthwhile experience to finally see the damn thing. I think if I find it on disc somewhere, I'm gonna pick it up.
Yeah, I think I'm getting the Blu-ray of this too. And tell me, how many kids' movies have the theme of a little girl getting executed and having to deal with the aftermath of her death? And how many kids' films have villains on both sides that are extremely relatable? Like that's what was really surprising me. I was so
Hmm.
happy they didn't make like the townsfolk that murdered the witch into these cliche mustache twirling bad guys. They clearly feel terrible about
Yeah,
what they
because
did
like
and they're
so,
trying to condone for it, and that really, like, I knew they weren't like as evil as everyone made them
yeah,
out to be, but I was really
so
surprised by how affected they
so
were by the actions they took.
so like what happened? Just brings up to speed. There's an old hobo bedtime story. Sorry, I think we're talking over each other. My signal's awful.
Yeah, no, I'm
But
sorry, carry on.
yeah, there's an old hobo in town who would read this girl a bedtime story to keep her asleep for another year. But that hobo's died, and now Norman's the only other paranormal sensitive person in town. So they try to bring the responsibility to him. But when I love the dissolves when Norman goes into the supernatural realm, where where everything in the background just burns away. That was beautiful. Like, I love the way that the creativity that went into some of the visual designs of this, and the way they transition between different places. But
Yes.
when he learns about the girl's story, he realizes that the zombies are just people that are, waking up because of the curse. And I like that the people who wrongfully executed her before realized that they were wrong. And I like that redemption. Like, they can learn beyond the grave what was wrong. There was a beautiful line about that.
Hmm. We were scared of her. Like that, the way they delivered that line in particular was really effective for me, and it does tie into how like paranoid. I always I have a soft spot for villains that are reflective of what the main character is going through, but the main character handles it in a better way. Like, it's perfectly reflective of Norman getting like full of in a town full of people that don't understand what he's going through and are scared of the possibility of life after death, and they all treat him poorly because of it. That's exactly what she's going through as well, and that was a very interesting dissection. Even if they make it a little bit obvious that the two characters were very similar, what they were going for, I still found it incredibly profound. It made like any lulls in the pacing and any dumb jokes along the way just all the more worth it by the end of it, for sure. It really does come together by the climax, and it's like the climax in 2001. Like, it's not as good as 2001, but it reminds me of the same thing where as soon as I get to the climax of the movie, all of my problems previously just wilt away.
Yeah, yeah, it's a very portive film. It just brings you into this world, and I love when a film can do that. It can just kind of transport you away, but helps you reconnect with some things in real life, and by giving you a different way to look at it, right? The way we think about or talk to people who have passed, like, or gone into past lives, like loved ones that we had growing up,
Mm-hmm. Uh,
and yeah, I like it, and even though it's like fantastical and it's for young kids, I do think it transcends that.
mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not afraid to
That's
be.
my connection on my end.
So you still sound okay in terms of audio, but I just wanted to say real quick, it definitely feels nostalgic in a way, like back when animated films weren't afraid to tackle edgy and dark themes in an appropriate way without letting jokes ruin the scenes. But also because there's a lot of adult humor in this movie that very much reminded me of early 2000s DreamWorks in a good way. One of my favorites was well, I don't think this is very historically accurate, teacher. It doesn't have to be historically accurate. It just has to sell pamphlets. Like, that is such a great like satire of business culture
Oh yeah.
parading off of old historical artifacts that kids wouldn't understand, but adults could definitely get a laugh out of. And of course, the classic, "You can't shoot at civilians. That's for the
Oh
police to
yeah.
do." I saw that. I was like, was this film made in 2020? Are you sure it was 2012? Are you sure? I might have to double check that information. Like, it's just so much I was surprised they could get away with, but I was so happy they did by the end of it. It doesn't feel like it's trying too hard to be edgy. It's just like a nice wink and nudge to the adults in the audience, like the best Shrek films did, or like, something like How to Train Your Dragon even has a few adult jokes here and there. The third one has tons of adult jokes, but I'm really glad when they don't have to feel like they're playing it too safe.
Exactly.
Mm.
Someone listening in has pointed out we have the name of the episode wrong at the moment, which we will change after the fact.
What? No.
Or maybe you can do something about that now.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Thank you for pointing that out, by the way. Let me see if I can change that in the Twitch stream. This will take me a minute. Devin, take it away while I'm going through my Twitch stream.
You didn't copy and paste. You didn't copy and paste the last episode.
No,
title, eh?
nah, that would make too much sense. You
We should
see?
probably call it Thursdays as well.
Yeah, you know what? That'd be fun. Let's do that.
True. And this is technically a Thursdays with Maury episode due to our delay. Yeah, just call it
Thursdays.
Thursdays. I
Yep.
mean, this is kind of our contingency day when everything goes to hell, like it has been the last couple of weeks. Just
All right. The title has been changed.
tumultuous work week in my end. I'm fighting through it,
Mhm.
and I look forward to getting together and talking about these.
Yeah, in person for sure. I'm looking forward to it. So I watched it behind
Thanks for
this.
pointing that out, Evil Reverend.
Yes, thank you, Evil
I don't know if
Reverend.
that's your
You're the
name
best.
on Twitch. I try to only keep Discord open when I do these, because if the Twitch is open as well,
Yeah.
then that cuts
Yeah, unfortunately you are kind in and out quite a bit, Devin.
my internet, and then I sound even more
Sorry, buddy. I barely got any of that.
robotic on my end.
A little bit. That's the benefits of terrible internet.
I gotta get better. It totally butchered, and I'm not well, but go.
Yeah, I'm picking up like nothing on your end, buddy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
It's only fitting because I was complaining about this exact same thing happening because I didn't learn from last time
No.
about the signal cutting out in Discord and how it completely butchered all my talking points on 2010 last week.
Yeah.
And then as I'm complaining about it and going on and on, the exact same thing happens. So it's only fitting. My audio quality is going to sound different because I'm talking on a Bluetooth headset, but I am able to walk closer to the modem. So
awesome.
Hopefully the signal's better, even though there's a different sound quality.
Yeah, it does. It's a different sound quality, but the signal is a lot more consistent. I hear you just fine.
There we go.
Alrighty. Alright, let's just, we're leaving off that end. Back to the movie. So this was one of the first movies, that we talked about recently. I actually checked out the behind the scenes, because I was so fascinated by the amount of detail put into the animation, and I have some fun facts to bring up. First off, how do you think Ghost Aggie, I think your name was? How do you think Ghost Aggie was designed?
I'm curious. I don't know.
So, it's a combination of stop-motion animation, and they 3D printed all of the distorted faces and the movements of the body. So all of that was actually stop-motion animation. On top of that, they used hand-drawn animation for all of the lightning effects that she causes. And the only CGI that was used was for the lighting and color grading everything yellow. Everything else was as practical as they could get it.
It's pretty awesome.
That is fantastic. I just hand-drawn animation meets stop-motion animation. Like, that's not a combination you see enough of. I was really glad they were just like, we could do this like CGI, and it would probably, be a lot easier. It'd probably look the same, but we want to put the extra work in. Even if the audience doesn't notice it, we will. And I always appreciate that dedication of craft and love into a product. The scene with the zombies rising out of the graves was the hardest scene to pull off. It took 2 years to animate the zombies coming out of the grave. 2 years to figure out like how to do it properly, how to add all the details like scraping in the mud and the snot, the individual like snot bubbles were all practical effects. Like they were all like practically stop motion animated. Like, and that scene happens what, like 30 seconds in the movie. So it shows that even with like 3D printing technology and digital cameras, there's so much effort and time that is put into every little detail of stop motion animation that I think goes unnoticed.
And I think
by
it's
a lot
all
of
the
people.
better for it. I think it's all the better for it, even if people don't understand the intensity of that process. I think results just come across very well on screen, and it has that organic feel to it. Like it feels very tactile, and like everything just has that handcrafted feel and element to it, and it just makes the work stand out so much more.
I agree. Yeah, and I think that's part of what makes it so charming too. It's like I find, like, I love Kubo and the Two Strings. It's one of my favorite Leica films, but I find at times it's kind of hard to tell what is stop motion animated and what is CGI. But here, like, the stop motion animation is beautiful, it's smooth, but you can also tell that it is stop motion animation. Like, you can see like all the fun little details that they put into stop motion animation, like yeah, instead of mud, they use like pieces of oatmeal that they color graded like brown, like the toilet paper zombies just being like small pieces of I forget what it was, but there's like all the charming little details you can notice that it's stop motion animation that's gorgeous and well done, but it feels like stop motion animation. It feels handcrafted, like you can feel and smell the animation just enough to add that level of charm to it, while also feeling like a very polished production. Definitely. So I do have some issues with the movie though. Like you said, I think the second act is a bit of a lull in the pacing. Like the townsfolk rampage on the zombies was funny, but I feel like they kind of reused that gag a little too much, and that kind of slowed down the film for me. A lot of the side characters, they're very entertaining. Anna Kendrick's character is a standout. She's just hysterical in the movie for me. They are also a little bit tropey, and I get that's kind of the point. Norman kind of sees the world in a normal way for being such an outcast. Kind of reminded me of Edward Scissorhands in that sense, funnily enough, speaking of Tim Burton. But it also means that side characters don't really have that much to offer and don't really change that much, except for Casey Affleck's amazing plot twist at the end of the movie, where she's just like, "Hey, do you want to go see a movie sometime?" It's like, I should bring my boyfriend along. He's a... And I'm like, oh, good, we got some gay representation. There you go, Devin. It's the second gay movie we're talking about on the podcast since Miami Connection.
Oh, damn. Wait. Well, I guess subtextually you could say it was gay, but it's just...
He straight mentions he has a boyfriend.
It wasn't overtly so.
He straight mentions he has a boyfriend.
I don't think so.
No, he does. Here, let me see if I can find the quotes in IMDb real quick.
And Paranorman, yes, but and that was a very distinct decision. But I mean, Miami Connection, I don't think that had any explicitly gay.
Okay, I was gonna say
it's just the way that they all hung around shirtless.
They're just hanging around.
Had the unintentional implication of it.
Yeah, that's fair. It was the '80s too, so to quote South Park,
no,
they were all a little gay.
I mean, it's crazy that that's like such a big deal, really. That like this was the first movie to do it, and like good on them. But why was this the first one?
It is kind of weird.
It's just interesting.
It kind of makes me feel like this. It kind of further emphasizes my point that this had like little to no producer control over the product. Like all the dark material they get away with, all the adult jokes, the fat kid framing his mom's yoga video, which I hope that woman in that video isn't his mom. I hope that video was just someone she recorded in a yoga class. We'll just slip that one by. And, you know, the whole part of Anna Kendrick's character basically whoring herself out for sexy Casey Affleck. She, like, zips down her shirt and does her hair. It's like, it's hysterical, but it's also like, wow. Yeah, a studio today would not let that slide for a kid's film unless it was like Adult Swim or something.
I think it was all tastefully implemented, like some of the more adult things in between stuff. Like I think it's a great movie that for all ages watching it.
Yeah, it does strike that like early 2000s DreamWorks gold, where it's like there's enough adult jokes and themes for adults to love it, but it also like teaches important lessons and is very colorful and fun for kids. Like it nails that perfect balance, and it was more tonally consistent than I was expecting too. I'm glad it nailed that mix of comedy and drama and just even like elements of horror. Like that scene where the zombie is like searching for his ear is horrifying. Like I'd imagine I would be terrified watching that scene as a kid, but it just makes me so glad details like that are in there. I really wish we did get more animated movies like this for sure, for better and for worse. There was another issue I noticed though, and I noticed this with every Leica film outside of Coraline in particular, ever since Coraline, there's like line deliveries that are like a little bit off. And I think the reason for that is because the stop motion animation got a lot smoother and they're struggling to kind of keep up with the dialogue. But every now and again, like one of Casey Affleck's lines or one of Cody Smith-McPhee's lines just fell a little bit flat, and it did kind of take away from the impact of some of the emotional moments a little bit. But I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's just every now and again I was like, yeah, I feel like that could have used another take. But again, that was likely just to keep up with the animation. But I've noticed it in especially in Kubo,
sure.
like I noticed that issue propping up now and again.
Yeah, I mean, you notice it, but it didn't really take me out of the movie. This did make me want to go see Leica's other films, because I actually haven't seen any of the other ones. I don't believe.
Really?
Open the Two Strings has been on my list for a while. What are some of the other ones they've done?
They've done Coraline, Corpse Bride.
Okay.
They've done Corpse Bride as well.
Oh, okay. I have seen Corpse Bride. That's like the one that I had seen before this.
Nice.
Coraline I'd been meaning to see, never got to, but I've heard good things about it.
The Box Trolls is okay. I haven't seen The Missing Link, but I heard it wasn't all that great. I think they did Monster House. I think that was the only non-stop motion animated film they did, kind of like Aardman with Art for Christmas, I believe, or at least they're involved.
I actually do remember. I do remember seeing Monster House back when it came out.
Me too.
That was a weird one, because there was a scene that looked like the animation was incomplete. I guess it was like a dream sequence where they were walking toward this house and just remembering seconds of it at a time, but it looked like the animation was incomplete. It was so bizarre for me. I mean, I saw it when it came out, so I was still kind of a young kid, and I didn't know what to think of it then. I might appreciate it more these days. I don't know, but it was just interesting.
Yeah, maybe that'd be a fun recommendation sometime. But yeah, Paranorman, it's surprisingly great. I wish we had more villains like this in animation. Wish more animated films were comfortable tackling with darker themes. It's really funny. The voice cast is perfect. I was shocked to hear Casey Affleck's voice. The first time I heard it, I was laughing my ass off. Just because I'm like, Casey Affleck in a stop-motion anime movie is probably one of the weirdest but most amazing casting decisions I've ever seen. Like, it caught me off guard, but he fit like the douchebag, jock, oblivious character perfectly, and that plot twist at the end is just icing on the cake. And it's got so much heart to it as well. It's a little bit derivative. The second act is a little bit of a lull for me, but overall, it's a pretty great movie, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Even if you're not really a fan of animation, give this one a great out of 10. 4 stars.
Yeah, honestly, I would give it the exact same rating. I would give it an 8. It just, yeah, I was just taken away by the breadth of the animation, and I thought the emotional climax of it was very worthwhile for the whole journey. I'm glad that I finally saw it, because it was one of those movies that the trailer stood out to me, and I remember it quite well for just being tonally different than anything else that was on TV at the time, where it didn't feel like it had to rush. I just like the music that they used, and they have a bad cover of it in the movie itself. I was kind of disappointed that they didn't play the song. Maybe they do somewhere in the end credits that I didn't hear. But
the White Stripes song? Oh no, they don't play that
Season
song.
of the Witch.
No.
Season of the Witch. Like they have the kids singing it at some point, but they don't play it. But I think the use of it in the trailer was great.
Nice. Maybe it was like later on the credits. Who knows? I only watched like the first 10 seconds of the credits before I swapped to the special features. So who knows? Maybe there's
Nice.
Avengers after credit scene. We'll never really know.
But
Feel
it's
free to
just,
tell us if there is.
it's an enjoyable film. It's a well-made film, and there's some great stuff to glean from it for people of any age. So I'm glad that I finally saw it. It makes me want to see the studio's other work that I have been neglecting to.
Nice. Well, that about wraps it up. Thanks to everybody who listened in. You're all the best. Stay cool out there. We have some interesting films next week and an interesting guest. A guest that has known Devin for quite some time, so it's a very scary fact. Her name is... I'm so sorry, I already forgot her name. It's on the tip of my... Alexis!
We'll find out next
Alexis Acorn. She's involved with
Yeah.
TV production, and she has lots of interesting stories to share. When she hops onto the podcast, she will be our guest, very special guest, as next episode was a poll-selected episode. I'm not quite sure what the episode title is yet. I think we're still working on it, but we've decided to tackle 3 very interesting films. Wes Craven's New Nightmares, or just New Nightmare. I think that's what it's called. Yeah, that's right. And on top of that, we're talking about 2019's The Assistant, which is a very divisive film that, I'm kind of interested to watch. And 2021's Censor, to top it all off. So, look forward to that next week. We will actually be on Tuesday this time, I'm hoping. We will hopefully be back on schedule. If not, we will definitely let you guys know. You'll be the first to know.
This is the plan as of now, and if not, we might fall back into Thursday as contingency. But I'm pretty sure we can make it this time.
Alrighty then. So, is it Tuesday yet? Take care, guys. Have a great night. Stay cool out there.
Have a good night. Thanks.
Don't die.
Thanks for listening in.
Take care.